What would you do if you caught someone red-handed stealing from you, only for them to look you dead in the eye and deny it like you were the crazy one? It all started on a regular Tuesday evening. I had just finished work and decided to hit the gym to unwind. The place was packed, people were scattered across the weight racks, some locked into their workouts, others scrolling endlessly on their phones between sets. A few were there more to socialize than exercise, including the usual treadmill loudmouth treating their run like a live podcast. I found an open bench near the free weights, placed my phone on the rack beside me, and started lifting. I had no idea that within minutes, my night would take an infuriating turn. Sweat dripped down my forehead as I powered through my final reps, fully focused on the burn in my muscles. When I finally sat up, I instinctively reached for my phone to check my workout timer, only to grab at empty space. My heart skipped a beat. I scanned the rack, the floor, my gym bag. Nothing. The phone was gone. A sudden chill ran through me as my eyes darted around the room. No one looked suspicious, just regular gym-goers lost in their own routines. Then I saw her. Standing by the treadmills, chatting loudly with someone, completely oblivious, or so I thought. Karen. She wasn't a stranger to me. She was the type of woman who radiated entitlement, the kind who always acted like rules didn't apply to her. And in her hand, tilted slightly away from view, was a phone. My phone. At first, I told myself it had to be a coincidence. But as I looked closer, my stomach twisted. The case was identical to mine, down to the small scratch near the camera lens. My mind raced. Did she really think she could just take it and walk away? Maybe she picked it up by mistake. Maybe she'd return it if I just asked. But the way she clutched it, angling it away from passers-by like she was hiding something, told me otherwise. I took a deep breath, pushing down my frustration, and approached her calmly. "Hey, excuse me, I think you might have picked up my phone by accident." Karen barely glanced at me, rolling her eyes like I had just interrupted the most important conversation of her life. "I don't know what you're talking about," she scoffed, her fingers tightening around the phone. I forced a polite smile, refusing to let irritation take over. "It looks exactly like mine. Maybe we can check." Before I could finish, she let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head. "Oh, please. Do you really think I need to steal someone's phone? This is mine." The way she said it, so condescending, so dismissive, made my blood boil. She wasn't just lying. She was acting like the very idea of being accused was beneath her. I wasn't about to let this slide. Not tonight. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "All right," I said, crossing my arms. "If it's really yours, then unlock it." Karen's expression flickered, just for a second. A crack in the performance. She scoffed, flipping the phone in her hand like she was considering her next move. "I don't have to prove anything to you," she snapped. I didn't miss the way her grip tightened, like she was afraid I'd snatch it away. The conversation had drawn some attention. A few people had paused their workouts, their eyes flicking between us, sensing something was off. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Then I guess this is gonna be awkward," I said, lifting my wrist and tapping a few times on my smartwatch. A sharp, blaring alarm exploded from the phone in Karen's hand. The gym fell into stunned silence. Karen jerked back like she'd been electrocuted, frantically pressing buttons in a desperate attempt to shut it off. But the sound wasn't stopping. She spun around, her head darting left and right as the realization sank in. Everyone was watching. People were pulling out their own phones, recording the scene unfolding before them. "That's weird," I said, stepping closer, my voice carrying through the quiet. "Almost like. I don't know, that phone was stolen." Karen's face twisted, her cheeks burning red. She let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh, her entire demeanor shifting. "Oh my God," she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite land. "I must have picked it up by accident." I raised an eyebrow. "Accident? These phones all look the same," she added quickly, her voice rising in pitch as she clutched the device like a lifeline. The crowd wasn't buying it. Whispers turned into murmurs. The gym staff had noticed the commotion, and before Karen could make another excuse, Mark, the gym manager, stepped forward. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firm, "we're going to need you to hand over the phone." Karen hesitated. For a split second, I saw it. She was debating whether to run, whether to double down, whether to twist the story into something that could get her out of this. Then, suddenly, she gasped. Her body jerked forward as she clutched her chest, stumbling slightly. "Oh no," she croaked. I don't feel so good." A few people exchanged glances. Karen swayed dramatically, her breathing turning ragged. I think I'm having a heart attack." A couple of bystanders murmured in concern. Someone even reached for their phone, ready to dial 911. But then a voice cut through the tension. "She's faking," said a guy near the squat racks. Karen froze. The guy, a paramedic, judging by the logo on his hoodie, walked over, arms crossed. "Your breathing's fine. No visible distress. Your heart rate's steady. If you were actually in cardiac arrest, you wouldn't be able to talk like that." Karen's mouth snapped shut. Silence stretched. The paramedic raised an eyebrow. "You done?" Karen's expression contorted from faux distress to pure fury. She straightened up like nothing had happened, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "Whatever," she snapped, thrusting the phone toward me as if it had burned her. I snatched it back, immediately checking the screen. My lock screen. My apps. My messages. Everything was still there. But when I scrolled through my security settings, something caught my eye. She had tried to access my banking app. A fresh wave of anger surged through me. Mark, the gym manager, shook his head. "We take theft very seriously," he said, his voice like steel. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Karen's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." A few people laughed under their breath. Others shook their heads, disgusted. "Oh, I'm serious," Mark said. "And don't bother coming back. You're banned." Karen's face twisted with barely contained rage. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "You people don't know who you're messing with." She grabbed her designer gym bag from a nearby bench and stormed toward the exit. But just as she reached the doors, someone let out a low chuckle. That chuckle turned into a snicker. Then a laugh. And just like that, the room erupted. Karen had spent the last 5 minutes lying, faking a medical emergency, and gaslighting everyone in the room. And now? She was exposed. She spun back, her face red with fury. Her gaze locked onto me, burning with hate. "You'll regret this," she mouthed. Then she was gone. The moment the doors shut behind her, a slow clap started. Then another. And then the entire gym was cheering. Mark patted me on the shoulder. "Sorry about that, man," he muttered. "Some people have no shame." I forced a chuckle, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. Karen had been caught. She had been humiliated. But something told me, this wasn't over. That night, as I left the gym, the feeling of triumph was still fresh. Karen had been exposed, humiliated, and banned. It should have been over. But as I walked toward my car, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I wasn't alone. A sleek black SUV sat idling a few rows down, headlights off, engine running. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see inside, but I could feel someone watching me. My gut twisted. Was it Karen? I ignored it, unlocking my car and tossing my gym bag onto the passenger seat. But just as I reached for the door handle, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A text. Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. A cold chill spread through my chest. My eyes flicked back toward the SUV. It didn't move. My heart pounded as I forced myself to stay calm, sliding into the driver's seat and locking the doors. I gripped the wheel, trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew. As I pulled out of the lot, the SUV stayed put. But as I turned onto the main road, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't really in the clear. I checked my mirrors constantly on the drive home, taking extra turns just to see if anyone was following. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my nerves were frayed. My house was dark and quiet, nothing out of place, but I still took a long moment before stepping out of my car, scanning the street, listening for anything unusual. Nothing. Still, sleep didn't come easy that night. Every creak of the house, every car passing by outside sent fresh waves of paranoia through me. And when my phone buzzed again in the middle of the night, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Another message. Sleep tight. That was it. No name. No context. Just those two words. By morning, the unease hadn't faded. If anything, it had settled deeper into my bones. I checked my security cameras, scrolling through footage from the night before. Nothing. No SUV. No shadowy figure lurking near my house. Maybe Karen had backed off. Maybe she was just trying to get into my head. But as I sat at my desk at work later that morning, my phone started buzzing non-stop. Texts. Missed calls. I frowned, unlocking the screen, and my stomach sank. My notifications were flooded with messages from people I barely knew. Some angry. Some disgusted. Others asking if the rumors were true. Rumors? Then I saw it. Karen had gone online. She had taken the gym incident and twisted it into something completely different. A fabricated story, complete with a cropped video clip, making it look like I had harassed her, that I had falsely accused her in a public space, humiliating her for no reason. The comments were brutal. This guy sounds like a psycho. Who does that to a woman in a gym? Wow, false accusations are a real problem. Hope she sues. I clenched my fists. She wasn't just harassing me, she was trying to destroy my reputation. I scrolled through her post, heart pounding. The lies were outrageous. She claimed I had stalked her for weeks before the gym incident. That I had lunged at her in a rage when she refused to give up her own phone. That the only reason she gave it to me was because she was afraid for her safety. My blood boiled. She had painted herself as the victim. And the worst part? People were eating it up. I forced myself to think rationally. She was smart. She hadn't posted the full video, just enough to twist the narrative in her favor. But I had the truth. I had the entire gym security footage. Wasting no time, I uploaded it. The full, unedited version. The clip where she clutched my phone, refused to unlock it, where the alarm blared, exposing her lie. I captioned it simply. Here's what actually happened. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Within an hour, the tide started turning. People called her out. The comments shifted. Wait, she lied? Damn, she played the victim real good, huh? She even faked a heart attack. What kind of sociopath? Karen must have seen the backlash because suddenly, her original post disappeared. Deleted without a trace. But I knew better. She wasn't giving up. This wasn't over. And I had a sinking feeling she was just getting started. The fallout from Karen's failed smear campaign should have been the end of it. She had been caught lying, exposed for the manipulative fraud she was, and publicly humiliated. But if I had learned anything by now, it was that Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat. She was the type to double down. The first sign came the next evening. I had just pulled into my driveway, still on edge from everything that had happened, when I noticed something was off. My car. At first glance, nothing seemed wrong, but as I walked around to the passenger side, my stomach lurched. A deep, jagged scratch ran the length of the door. And not just any scratch, someone had keyed the word "loser" into the paint. I clenched my fists, my pulse pounding. There was no doubt in my mind who had done this. My jaw tightened as I checked my security cameras, scrolling through the footage. And there she was. Karen. Smirking as she ran the key across my car, staring straight into the camera like she wanted me to know it was her. Then, just before walking away, she flipped off the lens, her expression filled with smug satisfaction. I wanted to scream. Instead, I saved the footage, my hands shaking with fury. This wasn't just petty revenge. She wanted me to feel violated, powerless, like she could get to me whenever she wanted. But I wasn't going to let her win. I filed a police report that night, sending them the footage as evidence. They said they'd look into it, but I could already tell what that meant. Without catching her in the act in real time, they couldn't do much. It was my word against hers. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside made my skin crawl. Every passing car had me checking my cameras. But the next morning, things escalated again. A court notice showed up at my door. I opened it, my stomach twisting into knots as I read the first line. Karen had filed a restraining order against me. I nearly laughed out loud at the sheer insanity of it. She was trying to flip the script, again. After stalking me, vandalizing my property, and publicly defaming me, she was now claiming that I was the threat? That I was the one harassing her? I wasted no time gathering my evidence, security footage, text messages, gym witnesses, the vandalism report. By the time I walked into the courthouse, I had everything I needed to destroy her claim. The moment the judge saw the footage of her slashing my car, lurking near my house, and flipping off my security camera, her case fell apart. The restraining order was denied. But more importantly, the judge issued a legal warning against her. If she continued harassing me, she would face actual criminal charges. I thought that might be enough to stop her. I was wrong. That night, as I got home, another wave of unease washed over me. Something was different. The street was quiet, too quiet. My porch light flickered as I stepped up to my front door, and that's when I saw it. A package sat at my doorstep, wrapped in plain brown paper. No return address. My stomach turned. Slowly, carefully, I crouched down, examining it without touching. Every instinct screamed at me that this was bad. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture before carefully opening the package. The moment I peeled back the paper, my blood ran cold. Inside was my old phone case. The one Karen had been gripping so tightly at the gym. The once smooth surface was now scratched to hell, carved up like someone had taken a knife to it. And tucked inside was a note. "Keep looking over your shoulder. You won't see it coming." I swallowed hard, gripping the note as my breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was a direct threat. She was making it clear, she wasn't done with me. I dialed the police immediately. This time, they took it seriously. They collected the package, examined my security footage, and noted Karen's escalating behavior. But they still couldn't arrest her, yet. They needed more. Something undeniable. Something that would stick. That's when I made my decision. If Karen wanted to play this game, fine. but I was going to be the one to end it. I was done playing defense. Karen wanted me paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when she'd strike next. But she had made a mistake. She underestimated just how far I was willing to go to stop her. The next day, I put my plan into motion. I had already installed extra security cameras around my house, but this time, I went a step further. I picked up a small, discreet GPS tracker, one I could attach to her car if I ever got close enough. If she was showing up at my house, keying my car, and leaving threats, she had to be watching me. I just needed to catch her in the act. It didn't take long. That night, as I sat in my darkened living room, watching my security feed, a familiar car rolled slowly down my street. Not her usual black SUV, but the same dark sedan I had seen in my footage before. Karen was trying to be sneaky, but she wasn't good at it. She parked a few houses down, waiting. Watching. I moved quickly. I slipped outside, keeping to the shadows, and approached her car from the blind spot of my cameras. My heart pounded as I reached under the bumper and attached the tracker. Then I slipped back inside and waited. A few minutes later, Karen pulled away. I opened my phone and watched the dot on the tracking app move. I followed it from a distance, careful not to get too close. Eventually, she led me to a small house on the outskirts of town, a place I'd never seen before. She pulled into the driveway and disappeared inside. This was it. The final piece I needed. The next morning, I took everything, the vandalism footage, the stolen phone incident, the threatening note, and now the tracking data, and brought it straight to the police. This time, there were no excuses. No warnings. They had everything. Within hours, officers arrived at Karen's house. She answered the door with that same smug attitude, probably thinking she could lie her way out again. But the moment they showed her the evidence, the footage of her keying my car, the security logs from my home, the GPS data tying her to my street, her face drained of color. She tried to deny it, of course. She always did. But the officers weren't having it. They arrested her on the spot for stalking, harassment, and destruction of property. As they put her in handcuffs, she turned toward me, her eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over," she spat. But I knew better. It was over. Days passed, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't constantly checking over my shoulder. There were no more messages, no more cars parked outside my house, no more cryptic threats. Karen had finally lost. The silence was eerie at first, almost like I had forgotten what it felt like to just exist without the weight of her obsession pressing down on me. But as time went on, I realized something: I was free. One afternoon, as I scrolled through my phone, I found the last text she had sent me. "Enjoy your little victory while it lasts." I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. It no longer had any power over me. Karen had spent weeks trying to control me, to make me feel powerless. But in the end, she was the one who lost everything. Have you ever dealt with someone who refused to take responsibility for their actions, no matter how much proof was against them? Share your experiences below. I'd love to hear your stories.